But less positive reaction was seen on handles like Better Batman Than Ben Affleck, where fans offered alternatives like My Cats and Meryl Streep.
It don't seem that it's right, you know, that you should have a smaller man playing as a Batman.
No. I'm Robert Pattinson, asshole. I don't do that. Screw you.
Acting ability, facial appearance, physique. Oftentimes, when it comes to castings in a superhero movie, fans are much more likely to dislike the choice than love it. In fact, some of the greatest casting decisions of the modern age were highly disliked during the early productions of their films. Robert Downey Jr. was ridiculed and criticized for being an alcoholic when he was cast as Iron Man, despite being sober for several years by that point. Actors like Tobey Maguire was questioned for his acting ability and whether or not his casting as Peter Parker spelled the end for Raimi's first Spider-Man film. If you want some of the most extreme reactions towards casting decisions, you only have to look at the reactions regarding Batman and his mythos to get the most extreme of complaints.
Obsessive in his anger and fixation on revenge. But will he be portrayed that way in a new movie from Warner Brothers coming out in June? Many hardcore fans are afraid he won't. They have been writing hundreds of letters to Warner Brothers since they found out about the man cast as Batman.
When it comes to casting a superhero, looks are a big deal. Fans are always asking things like, is the actor tall enough? Do they look like the comic version? What's their build? Casting directors also consider these factors, but it opens the floodgates for harsh comments if the actor does not fit in with these criteria. Let's take a look at Batman, for example. Bruce Wayne is typically portrayed as tall, attractive, and muscular. Fans often want a one-to-one adaptation of these features when it comes to actors playing them, so they must be tall, handsome, and intimidating. In the 80s, when Warner Brothers was looking for an actor for their new Batman movie, everyone thought of big names like Sylvester Stallone or Clint Eastwood. Basically, fans wanted an action star who looked the part and had a track record of blockbuster hits. But Tim Burton had other ideas. He met with a lot of action stars at the time, but none of them had the vibe he was after. Instead of physicality, he was interested in exploring Batman's psyche. What drives a person to dress up like a bat?
A lot of people think you're as dangerous as the Joker.
He's psychotic.
Some people say the same thing about you.
Burton ended up casting Micheal Keaton, who did not match the traditional masculine look but had the intensity he wanted. Keaton brought a unique energy to the role, and even though he wasn't the muscular type, he conveyed that feeling of instability that Burton was aiming for.
Now you want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts.
Still, fans were furious by the decision and made their feelings very clear. Some fans booed a Warner Brothers exec at Comic-Con who was trying to advocate for Micheal Keaton's casting, and some fans even criticized Bob Kane, who tried to express his excitement for Keaton's casting, with some fans claiming that Kane was paid by Warner Brothers to say good things about the movie. A majority of fans, however, expressed their displeasure through mail, sending thousands of letters to Warner Brothers voicing their disapproval. The main issue: Keaton's casting background and appearance. At the time, he was mostly known for comedies like Mr. Mom and Beetlejuice. Fans could not understand how a comedy actor could play such a serious role. They feared the film would turn out goofy and campy, especially since the last major Batman adaptation was the campy Batman 1966. Fans wanted a darker and more serious take on the character, one that would allow the general public to respect the character and not treat him like a jokey children's mascot.
Bo's afraid Hollywood will just poke fun on what could be a legitimate drama.
If I am wrong and Micheal Keaton blows me away, I'll be the first to admit. You can come back here and say, hey, Bo, you were wrong, and I'll say, yes, I was. But I don't think you guys are going to be making any trips back to Cerrito.
Keaton's casting for many was a signal of yet another lighthearted interpretation, despite the fact that Keaton had proven to be talented enough to star in more serious dramas.
I think that he's kind of a wimp.
He's balding, he's short, he's not broad, he's just not there. He's not Batman.
The criticisms surrounding Keaton's looks were also very brutal. The Wall Street Journal called him a wimp with a weak jaw and a receding hairline. Basically, they were describing him like a British person, and many people thought he didn't fit the mold of a hyper-masculine hero.
I remember that this was so newsworthy that the front page of the Wall Street Journal, of all places, had an article about what was wrong with us for choosing Micheal Keaton to be Batman. You can't buy that kind of publicity.
It's just been stupid amounts of fun, and you know, he's dark, very nasty. He's a psychopath, sociopath, mass murdering clown, and it's really coming together, and the movie looks amazing. It's a lot darker than the first one, and I think a lot bigger too.
Before The Dark Knight began production, Heath Ledger was known as the pretty boy in Hollywood. Heath did other projects, of course. However, for the most part, he was known for more preteen and young adult movies. However, Ledger was a monumental talent, one that had incredible range and only pursued roles he found interesting. When Nolan began developing the sequel to Batman Begins, he met with Ledger to discuss the roles he could play, especially the Joker. Ledger had a similar vision and idea of what the Joker within this world would be like. At the time, playing the Joker was an intimidating task for many actors of the time. This was an era where Jack Nicholson and Mark Hamill had cemented themselves as the definitive iterations of the character, and some felt that surpassing their performance was too difficult.
Hurt people. I like them already.
However, another problem was that fans were under the impression that Joker in The Dark Knight would be even remotely similar to the comic version Nicholson or Hamill's take. Because of this idea that Nolan was adapting a Killing Joke-like iteration of the character, fans had preconceived ideas of the type of actor who would be cast in the role. They had to be tall, have lanky bodies, skinny, and have elongated facial features. Because of this, certain fan casts were popular at the time, including Robin Williams, Johnny Depp, Vincent Cassel, and the most famous of all, Crispin Glover, who fans loved for his very Joker-like appearance. This is the type of look fans wanted for the Joker, someone who essentially had a very similar look to the comic iteration. Once again, the casting of Ledger was more about the director's intent than the outwards appearance. However, that didn't stop the onslaught of complaints from the fanbase. If you look at many complaints at the time, they boil down to Heath having no resemblance to the Joker. He's a pretty boy with attractive facial features and a built body. He does not at all represent the exaggerated appearance of the character. It seems more people cared about how similar you look to the Joker rather than the type of performance you can bring to the role. Speaking of performance, that's another element many complained about regarding the casting. Yeah, for some strange reason, many viewed Heath Ledger as a mediocre or downright terrible actor. Some claimed that he had done no role, which proves he could pull off an energetic and chaotic role like the Joker. This idea was incredibly ridiculous and very prevalent at the time. If you want to play a particular character, you must play a similar type of character in a different movie to even be considered for a role. Some stated that they couldn't see Ledger in the role, which was fair. Still, many went out of their way to say that Ledger was just a bad actor and had yet to do anything impressive.
Can I collective sound you might hear right now is jaws dropping all over the interwebs after it's revealed Ben Affleck will replace Christian Bale as Batman in the 2015 Man of Steel follow-up.
I'm Batman.
And of course, fans, famous and non-famous alike, are taking to Twitter to air out their issues with the casting department.
When Ben Affleck was cast as Batman, it triggered some extreme reactions, with fans creating countless petitions demanding that Warner Brothers recast the part. The reason? Well, Ben Affleck supposedly didn't have what it took to portray the character. He didn't look like Batman, his jaw was not square enough, and his acting ability didn't have what it took to play the character, despite being in a ton of more serious dramas. Instead of Ben Affleck, the actors fans preferred were people like Jeffrey Dean Morgan and, most popular of all, Scott Adkins, who was a relatively well-known stunt actor associated with mid-sized action flicks.
I want to see Carmine Falcone.
There's something more emotional and doesn't necessarily know that he's going to save the day. He doesn't know if being Batman is going to work or do anything. He knows that there is no other option. Basically, the options are kind of death or being Batman.
After Ben Affleck stepped away from his Batman movie, Matt Reeves, who was signed on as the director, saw this as a chance to tell his own story. He imagined Batman as a guy deeply impacted by the death of his parents, someone who can't let go of his rage and isolated himself from the world. For Matt, Batman isn't about being a hero, it's more about how he rationalizes and deals with the tragedy of his life. Matt wanted to dive deep into Batman's mind and explore his trauma, so he decided to tell a detective story that looked at Gotham's hidden corruption and its ties to Bruce Wayne's family. Instead of focusing on a specific body type, he looked for an actor who could bring the right energy to the role, which led him to Robert Pattinson. After seeing Pattinson in the film Good Time, Matt loved how he captured the feeling of repressed anger and deep sorrow. He even wrote the script with Pattinson in mind. However, when Pattinson was announced as Batman, it triggered immense backlash from fans. They criticized his looks, acting ability, and physique. Many felt that he did not look like Bruce Wayne, and suggested actors like John Hamm and Armie Hammer to play the role instead. Ironically, Pattinson actually resembled some comic book illustrations of Bruce Wayne, but that got lost in the noise. Fans also dismissed Pattinson's acting skills, mostly pointing to his role in Twilight and claiming he was a bad actor overall, which is rich coming from the same people who wanted Scott Adkins to play Batman.
I'm a baby.
They ignored Pattinson's years of work in indie films that showcased his range and talent. Even with plenty of evidence showing he could act, many still clung to their negative views.
You better get up, do some fucking push-ups, and be grateful you got fucking cast in the movie, motherfucker.
The biggest debate revolved around his body type. A lot of fans believed that Batman needed to be super muscular. Even though Matt was more focused on character depth, things got even crazier when Pattinson joked in an interview about Hollywood's unhealthy standards for male bodies, which some fans took as him being lazy. This led to a bunch of false rumors stating that Pattinson looked like a junkie on set, and the film shut down production in order for him to bulk up within 2 weeks. Of course, many fake outlets with no journalistic integrity used the opportunity to start creating many other false and defamatory statements about Pattinson and his character.
I don't have time for that. I can't be bothered with that. What the fuck else are you doing, you asshole? You're sitting at home during a pandemic where you're making mac and cheese.
The idea that he wasn't going to be hyper jacked in the movie really ruffled some feathers. This is despite the plethora of physical evidence showing that he was working out for the role. But because he wasn't as large as Ben Affleck, people often dismissed the work he put in. It's easy to get passionate about these characters, but we need to remember that these stories are fictional and meant for fun. Creatives should have the freedom to reinterpret characters in new ways. If a particular take does not resonate with you, that's totally fine. There are always other versions out there to enjoy.